critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Wednesday night, as always, joined by the legend that is Malcolm MacDonald, Supermac, and the other legend from the Evening Chronicle, John Gibson. Good evening, lads.
Good evening to you, Steve. Hi, John.
Good to see you both, and I hope you're both fitting well, despite this COVID still hovering around, and it seems to be on the increase up north. We hope that that subsides sooner rather than later. But as always, we're here to talk football for an hour, and got plenty to talk about. And with it being International Week, we'll probably delve into a bit of England as well, and maybe even look at the politics of football, which it's showing the Premier League up to be the Scrooges of world football at the moment when it comes to asking to help out the nearest rivals in the EFL. But we'll come to that a little bit later. Let's look back at the game at the weekend. On most of the shows across the week, I don't think any of us, including ourselves, could have predicted such a comprehensive performance, I suppose, Malcolm, against Burnley, who I think we're all expecting it to be a little bit of a banana skin, but hey presto, the team that Steve Bruce managed to put out did the business. It
certainly did, and right from the start, I have to say that I think the major difference was made by Saint-Maximin. He was the way he runs at defences, he scares them. Stupid, he really does, and Burnley, they not only looked uncomfortable playing against him, but I just sensed that there's something not right in the club. I know that there's been problems between the board and the manager, and I just feel it's maybe creeping further down into the dressing room, and the players are taking it out with them. A lot of them just didn't look as if they were on form. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter whether you're in form, out of form, or what. Trying to deal with Saint-Maximin is one hell of a problem, and it was good to see other players around reacting off of him. And in the end, everybody was sort of beginning to take part. Super goals, and I thought Newcastle they looked the part. And that's the second time they've done it this season. The first was the opening game against West Ham, and then they've done it again against Burnley. Now, on West Ham, they looked, and everybody was prophesying that West Ham are they going to go down? There's all sorts of problems there. You have a look at the Premier League table, and all of a sudden they're just one place behind Newcastle now, and so they're not such a bad side after all. So let's give Newcastle credit. I think, particularly on these two performances, I was impressed. I'm sure you were as well, John, weren't you?
Yeah, I think I was. Yes, Burnley are a shadow of their former selves, as you were talking about, Malcolm. There's things very seriously wrong, and there is between Dyche and the board, without a shadow of doubt. That filters down the dressing room as well. They have literally no points this season, which tells you how bad they are. But let's look at the positive sides of things. Saint-Maximin is the player I adore. Newcastle United are an average, steady away side without him. The difference between us and some of the opposition is Saint-Maximin. He's unpredictable. He's blisteringly fast. He's surprisingly courageous, He takes an awful lot of knocks. He invites knocks the way he plays. He invites tough tackling, but he gets up and plays on. Maybe he rolls about. Maybe they've got to come on with the magic sponge, but he plays on and he knows what's coming the next time, but he still makes a run. He scored a super opening goal. When Burnley equalised, I felt it was the only part of the match where they looked as if they might do something, and they perhaps thought at that stage they would go on and win it. They had to be killed off, and the run he made to set up Callum Wilson's goal was absolutely magnificent.
Wasn't it?
I think, Malcolm, he's the difference between us being a mid-table side and us fighting relegation near the bottom. The secret is to keep him fit and keep him interested. If they can keep him fit, keep him interested, and long-term, keep him full point.
The problem is going to be, John, if he keeps churning out those kind of performances, that the big boys are going to come in, and because he's getting all the headlines, they're seeing it on television, and they'll be saying, "Hey, we've got to have somebody like that."
There's no question, Malcolm. That is the big worry, and we know that the man upstairs will take the coin if enough of it is offered, and that is a massive worry to us, because we want to build a side round Saint-Maximin. We don't want to have his money with the excuse being, well, here it is, Steve Bush, you can go and buy it, because you don't end up buying people as good as that again. So it is important to keep him. If I may say, the one other thing that came out of that match for me is that we had last look as if we've got a half-decent centre-forward in Callum Wilson, who has now got 4 Premier League goals in 4 games. Our record goal scorer, as you know, guys, last season in the Premier League was Jonjo Shelvey with 6. This guy's got 4 from 4 games, and that is a big difference. And what we've seen so far, he is by far the best of the signings we made during the window that's just closed, because we haven't seen enough of Fraser yet. He hasn't been up fit enough to actually start regularly. I think Hendrick is just steady away. He's fine, but he's steady away. He's not going to pull up any trees. The young boy at fullback has got huge potential for me, but there's still question marks against him defensively. I feel he can get caught out with his opponent on the wrong side of him. And what I don't want him to do is to become another DeAndre Yedlin. A fullback with huge pace that gets forward magnificently but can't defend. Yedlin's not going to change at his age. This boy can still learn. There's no question about that.
Okay, Munch says, what is the name of the opening track? It's Worlds Collide by the Long Sands. Malcolm Shelvey, John touched on him a little bit there. We've given him a bit of stick on the show. He turned up at the weekend. That's the frustrating thing about Jonjo Shelvey. Midweek, absolutely nowhere to be seen against lesser opposition. The weekend, he gets the captain's armband because Lascelles isn't playing and puts in a great performance.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. He wasn't to be seen in the cup game last midweek until he scored the goal.
Until a great goal, yes.
It was. Yeah. It was a great goal, but you just need more from him. And when he wants to play, he's a great central cog to have in your side. But he's so moody. I think he gives me that impression that he's moody and maybe if somebody says the wrong word just before he's going out, he'll go, "Oh, I'm not playing today." He's got all the attributes going. I really do want to see him push forward a lot more, not get playing in between the centre halves, and we've now got a forward line that could become quite frightening. But it needs somebody like Shelvey to be well in support and knocking balls through all the while. I think I could be hired by the club just to go and boot him up the backside before each game. That's what he needs.
Before I come to John on that, Toon fans asking, is the big Brazilian change in your mind yet, Supermac? Obviously, you've been a big critic of Big Joe, but again, it was a half decent performance by him. Somebody after the game said, we're so used to getting 2 out of 10 from him last season that now that he's putting in 6 out of 10s, it feels like he's a world beater. But I think it's probably a good way of summing up, Mal. At least he's putting some effort in. He's getting booked. He's putting challenges in. He's passing the ball. Like I said to you, maybe that's his position, and Wilson coming into the team has certainly helped him probably more than anybody else, I think.
I don't know about helping. I still look at Joelinton and I just find myself shaking my head and going, no, just not good enough. What I never see from him is him turning towards the opposing goal and sprinting. He's done it twice. And I keep mentioning this, but he did it twice last season, and each time he got a goal from it. And I don't think that he gets the emergency of playing in the Premiership. That you've got to be on it all the time and really going. You can't take seconds off in a game. It's got to be a consistent thing. And he isn't consistent at all. And I see players just looking at him now and again and going, "Oh dear me," he's just not got it for me. I think put him down a couple of levels, and he'd be absolutely terrific. Oh, they'd love him, but he's not a Premiership player.
Okay, one day we'll get something positive out of Malcolm. John, have you seen a little bit of it? Have you seen something positive, John? I know it's honestly, and it's because I get it in the neck from the supporters going, bloody Malcolm, he's never given Joelinton any praise. And I'm going, well, to be honest, I can see what he's getting at. But I did say I was going to give him 10 games this year, and I have been very fair to him. And he's just had the birth of his first child, I think. So congratulations to him on that. So, John.
No, has that been his problem for the last 9 months?
Well, maybe it has. Maybe he's had a bit of nagging going on at home. I mean, maybe that's been it. But anyway, John, Shelvey and Joelinton, 2 enigmas at the club.
Well, you knew you were opening a can of worms with the big man when you mentioned Joelinton there. I mean,
don't blame me, blame Toon fan, because he's asked the question. It's still there on the channel. There is the big Brazilian change in your mind, yes?
I was going to go away and have my tea and come back a half an hour later when Malcolm was nearly finished. But there we go. Shelvey and Joelinton, yeah. I mean, Shelvey, the frustration is because the talent is huge and it often looks as if it's going to be wasted. And he was nothing at Newport and then come up with a stupendous equaliser, and believe you me, got Newcastle out of jail because there were 3 minutes of normal time remaining and they were out of the League Cup. Now we're talking about being in the semi-final after beating a Championship side in the next round. So things have changed. Joelinton is interesting. If Joelinton had been a kid coming through our academy and was the age he is and stripped like he did and played like he did, you might well see a bit of promise. What he is going to suffer from is every time you look at him, you remember that he is a £40 million striker who cost twice as much as anybody else in Newcastle's history, and that camouflages and colours your judgment. He's certainly not, as we've known for a long time, a centre forward. It's whether he's a number 10 or he is a left-sided front player. In either position, he faces a lot of competition to get in the side because there's Maximum, there's Fraser for the other side, there's Almiron to try to fix in. There's a lot of people to try to fit in. My concern, widening it up, Steve, when you're asking about him, is that if in all our optimism, if you still look at Newcastle United, you tell me outside of Callum Wilson who's regularly going to score goals. And that's not just Joelinton, that's Almiron, goals per game. Maximum might be well coming into the position where he'll score a few now. But other players, we still don't score enough goals. And I certainly don't see Joelinton going off on a run of scoring goals. I mean, we've talked about him that much, and he's taken that much stick, and so much of it has been from me as well as from Malcolm. I'm actually wishing the poor lad to do well, because I'm actually feeling guilty for having the audacity to judge him as a Premier League player. I want him to do well. Yes, he's done better, but he was bound to be able to do better at some stage, because the bar had been set so low. It would take a limbo dancer to get under it. So he was going to be able to do better. He has done better, but I reserve my judgment. I haven't changed my mind. And I would still like to know exactly who decided to sign him for 40 million and give him the number 9 shirt. Because signing him for 40 million was ridiculous, and giving him the number 9 shirt was absurd.
Well, it was down to Mick Tate and Steve Nixon, I think. Mick Tate scouted him, and Steve Nixon's the head of recruitment. He gave the go-ahead, so it's down to them two, ultimately. And, but we always know that there was something strange going on. We'll never get to the bottom of it. Mike Ashley was trying to force that deal on Rafa. Rafa wouldn't take it, and the rest's history. So, anyway, we'll see. We'll see what happens with him over the course of the course of the season. Shelvey, John, he is still an enigma. That was a great performance, and that's the frustrating thing about him, isn't it? He puts in the odd shift like that where it's proved to be vital. Newcastle got a good 3 points. Saint-Maximin was no doubt the difference, but Jonjo Shelvey played his part as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt, and I don't think any of us have ever doubted his ability. The one thing Malcolm keeps saying, and I couldn't agree more, because I think it sums up Shelvey totally, is that for him to be effective, he's got to play on the edge of their penalty area and not on the edge of our penalty area. And that's what he doesn't do. And that's how he scored a first-class goal at Newport, because he was up playing on the edge of their penalty area. And when he does that, he's a quality player. What worries me is that he can fade from a game very easily. And if the tide turns against Newcastle, then his discipline goes. And he flies in with wild tackles, and he gets booked, and then he's just one other booking away from a sending off, which is totally going to change the game. He has possibilities. I know you like him, Steve, because he looks like you, but but there's got to be a little bit more to it than that, baby.
I'm not a fan. Let's look away from Newcastle for a second, and just really because people are asking, and I was going to ask you about this anyway. Tom Dixon saying Malcolm and Johnny are shocked with the Liverpool and Man United scoreline at the weekend. Would you agree, says Kenneth Stark, would you, the panel, agree that the 6-2 and 7-1 scorelines over the weekend wouldn't have happened under normal circumstances? Malcolm, it's an interesting one, because Liverpool, as you know, is a foreboding place to go as a visiting player. Anfield, with all its flags and scarves, and you'll never walk alone. It gets the hairs on the back of any footballer's neck up, to be fair, when you go, even as a visiting fan. What it does to a player, I don't know. But the pressure there, it's not there anymore. And ultimately, you're going down there. It must be just like a training game for a lot of teams. And there's, that one goal advantage that teams, supposedly get from the home support, it's not there. And do you think that had something to do with it? Were you surprised at those results at the weekend?
I wasn't surprised so much with what Spurs did at Old Trafford. And the reason why I say that is, even despite Man United taking a very early lead, that Spurs have been playing some cracking stuff, and probably they'd look back at the fixtures they've played so far and say their worst performance was against Newcastle United, which really was an excellent point for Newcastle. But I just got the feeling that I watched the manager very carefully. he was ecstatic when they took the lead very early on. And I just thought it was a bit too much. I've got the feeling that he's under severe pressure from before that game. And now that that game's been played and finished in the way that it did, then, you know, I think he's now very much on his last knockings, that they won't put up with much more of this. But with Liverpool, it was almost as if that Aston Villa had just had like angel dust sprinkled over them. They suddenly were playing some stuff that we've not seen them play. Individuals really going for it, and it was one of those. I still quite haven't got my head around what Aston Villa did to Liverpool, because I can't put my finger on what Liverpool was doing wrong for that to happen. And well, I've experienced big wins and I've experienced one or two big losses. And sometimes you walk away. There was one particular game I was managing Huddersfield and we got absolutely thrashed at Man City, but I walked away scratching my head because the scoreline was 10-1. They beat us 10-1, and yet they had 12 shots and Huddersfield had 19. You know, and we actually had more shots than Man City, but it was just everything was going in for them. And I think that's pretty much what happened for Aston Villa. And you get freaks like this, and for two games to be so freakish on the same day, well, maybe lockdown is having an effect, you know, an empty stadia and what have you. It is difficult for players to really raise themselves up. You know, a lot of players, they feed off the atmosphere that the crowd set, and certainly when I arrived, I can talk firsthand that when I first went out at St James Park for the Liverpool game, dear me, I sensed an electricity there in that stadium that I had never experienced before, playing for Fulham and playing for Luton. Just hadn't had that before, and it does raise you, it lifts you, and a lot of players, they react well to it. There are one or two who don't react well, that feel that under pressure from it, but it's the crowd that really makes something serious, and so it is difficult for some players, I have to say, but nevertheless, watching Man United, I just feel that there's something seriously wrong there.
Yeah, it's never really been the same since Ferguson left, Malcolm. To be fair, they've been in a massive Ferguson hangover, haven't they?
Yeah.
Plenty.
I think one of the things as well, just quickly, Steve, before we go on to the next topic, with the Liverpool situation, bearing in mind that we want to keep Aston Villa beneath us and not doing crazy things like that. Two things came into play for me. One was Adrian, the goalkeeper, had an absolute nightmare standing in for the Brazilian boy, an absolute nightmare. And if you remember, kicked one out straight to them. And everything went right on the day for Aston Villa and wrong for Liverpool, in as much as two, maybe three of the goals took huge deflections after that off the back of players to go on the other side of the net. You need things like that to happen for you. Nonetheless, Liverpool absolutely were bladdered and Villa did terrific. But I think it was one of those days when things went completely right for Villa and completely wrong for Liverpool. That was the result that shocked me, not the one, as Malcolm said, it wasn't Man United. It was Liverpool losing 7. Liverpool losing 7, did we ever think, whether there was no crowd or a full crowd, that was going to happen? Would Newcastle beat Liverpool 7? Well, of course we would, but that was a Malcolm McDonald saying.
Quite a few comments coming in. L71 says, I just walked into a lamppost watching this on my phone. I hope you're all right. Alan Thompson says it was at Villa Park. I knew it was at Villa Park, mate. I was just making a point about crowds, etc. Gary Douglas is asking, did I not know that the 5-0 Manchester United game was on YouTube already? Yes, it did, mate. What you're going to have to do at the weekend is watch that on one browser and then listen to us comment on it on the other. We're going to do a retro match day at the weekend, lads. So me and the fans are going to be watching the Newcastle 5-0 win and talking about the good old days. So that's going to be something a little bit different.
Good.
Just to keep people entertained. But yes, that's how you'll do it. You'll watch it on there, so we can all watch the same version. I'll stick that in the description box, and we can all enjoy that. Christopher's asked a question about Cyprus. We're going to go over that at the end of the show. You've already read me mind, Chris, so don't worry about that. Here's a good one, lads. A good one for you. Malcolm, when Dwight Gale's fit, would you like to see him partnered up front with Callum Wilson? That's a question to both of you, lads.
Personally, yes, I would. And I think that they would work well together. But he's not going to be fit, though, I think, for a good 2 or 3 months. He's out for quite some time. Then he's got to get himself fit. I could see him doing that. But of course, he would have to come back in the place of Joelinton. And I can't see, I can't see that happening.
The truth is, Malcolm. Yeah, the reason I would like to see Dwight Gale playing with Callum Wilson when he's fit and when he's good and ready is because he might just score goals, and whatever other partner, whether we put 2 up top or we put 1 up top in a 10 behind him. Who's going to score goals as Wilson's partner? Is Andy Carroll going to score a lot of goals as his partner? Probably not. Is Joelinton going to score a lot of goals as his partner? Probably not. Even is Almiron going to score a lot of goals as his partner? Not. No. But Dwight Gale might just, we don't carry enough firepower up front. And I still regret that in this transfer window, the mistake we made is that we didn't get another striker in on loan because we needed that. We still haven't got enough goals in the tank, virtually guaranteed.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, John.
Yeah, we're going to be in a big mess if we get an injury to Wilson or Allan Saint-Maximin, that's for certain. There was a question earlier just asking, have you changed your mind on Hayden, Malcolm?
No.
I'm off for me tea again.
Oh, no, you just said no. We'll leave it at we'll leave it at that. Lee Taylor says, see that Hatton Ben Arthur's available on a free. Would you like to see him back at the club as a rotation player, Mal?
What a waste of talent. He is, for me, one of the greatest wastes going.
Is that a no then, Malcolm?
I said no, all right, John. Because you see, Hatton Ben Arthur, I see a similarity between him and Shelvey in as much that they were moody. And if everything wasn't absolutely right, then they don't go out and perform. And a footballer's job and task is to get out there and perform to the very best of his ability every time he goes on the pitch. And Hatton Ben Arthur wouldn't do it. Similarly to those times when Shelvey throws a moody, like he seemed to do last week in the cup match.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, for me, Ben Arthur wouldn't be worth the gamble now. I completely agree with what you're saying there. 100%.
How old is he now? He must be what, 34, 35?
I'm not sure. Not sure at all. But
somebody will let us know.
Somebody will let us know. Terry Ross, good to see you, mate. He says, question to the panel. Do you believe with another lockdown coming, we'll ever get a full house at St. James's Park? John, fans coming back in.
That's a great question. I'm so desperate for that to happen because not only do we want to be in St James's Park and feel the whole place buzzing, but watching games on television, either with the sound off and just the sound from the stadium, or being in the stadium with no sound and all we can hear is the manager's voices, is just not the answer. An artificial sound is just a nonsense, isn't it? We desperately need the fans back in. I think it's an awful long way off. Maybe social distancing, you could get a very small crowd in the St James's Park with 52,000 and have them social distance a lot further apart than in a restaurant. But I believe the problem, as far as the government's concerned, is not having that social distancing within the ground, but the fans getting to the ground on public transport, hitting the bars in the town after the game, and then getting back home. It's not so much the social distancing within large grounds, but everything else that goes with it. It is an absolute tragedy, and the game is I've heard a few people say that these incredible results we're getting in the Premier League and the amount of away teams that win are actually good for football because it's good fun. No, it's not good fun. It's artificial. Please bring the crowds back. We need you kids. We need you back in the stadium.
Premier League clubs, Malcolm, are actually talking to the government, asking the government to reconsider letting fans back into the grounds. Barry Hogan says it's nice to see the Premier League know who to contact. I thought they ignored MPs.
Well, it is good that moves are taking place to getting people back into the stadium. But it's not just the government who are struggling with this. I came across a situation where I went to the North Shields game at their last home match. Fabulous match against Shildon. It really was. Super game of football. 3 great goals. But North Shields are limited to 150 people in the crowd. But they've got a ground that's big enough that will probably take double that, and everybody's still doing the proper distancing, and you see 150 in that particular stadium, and you think, come on, you could easily double it. There was the far half of the ground was virtually empty.
Yeah.
The 150 that were there were all in one half, around one goal and up to the halfway line on either side. But this is being imposed by the Northumberland FA in conjunction with the Durham FA, and I think that they really are just going over the top, and I think that. I don't know whether people are scared of making brave decisions, in both the football authorities, in the government, and in all sorts of other fields. But I really think that we've got to start saying, yeah, we can fight this coronavirus, but we can do it by being sensible. And as we go to football grounds, still keep the distancing and what have you. When we go to pubs, when we go to wherever, I'm getting quite frustrated. Why on earth cannot Newcastle, when it's got the size of a ground to hold 52,000? Why can it not at least let in a bit less than half of that number, 20,000? It could be done over a period of time prior to the match, and people will be well spaced out. I don't understand it. I think everything's just going way too far, and there is a massive group of scientists who are saying we have got to We've got to seek to lead as normal a life as possible. And we're doing anything but that.
Yeah. The whole thing, lads, is an absolute nightmare. You know, we could probably talk all night just about that alone, but I don't think we're any closer or any nearer to getting fans back in. I was at Dunstan last night. Every precaution was taken. The lads were, the lads were on the gate taking the temperature, and everybody was, written into the book on the gate. 200 people there to watch Dunstan and Tadcaster play. Everyone had masks on within the ground who, wasn't involved in the game on the pitch. But yeah, I mean, look, football is really going to suffer. I heard Lord Ian Botham this morning talking on television, and he was making reference to his friend who was the CEO at Sunderland, and he said that for every game they play behind closed doors, they are losing £450,000. So that just tells you, Sunderland are losing that. And he said, this can't go on forever. And eventually, if this continues, you will just see clubs going out of business. So, I'm sure some mags will be delighted to see Sunderland going out of business. I personally wouldn't. I'd like to see them survive so we can beat them again. But it's awful, Malcolm. It's awful.
Yes. And you look at the Championship Division 1 and Division 2, and they are really struggling. But go a bit further down. I saw a bit of Spennymoor playing on the television. Empty ground. They're playing in the National League, but outside of the Football League. Why can they not have a couple of hundred people in the size of the ground that they've got? Why are we going to such ridiculous extremes? All I can think of that it's just fear. People who are there to make decisions are so fearful that they won't make the decisions.
Yep, you're right.
And it's going to cripple the country. It's going to cripple Europe. It's going to cripple the world if we don't all start using a bit of common sense.
Yeah, John, it's true though, isn't it? What Malcolm is saying, it is going to cripple the teams, certainly in the lower leagues. And the meeting that took place this week at the Premier League, where the Premier League the members clubs were meeting to decide how much money they were going to be able to give the EFL. They couldn't really decide on whether they were going to give them anything because there's such a cross-section of opinion. Some of the Premier League chairman had allegedly said that they felt that the EFL clubs had £156 million in transfer fees off them, so that they didn't feel that they owed them anything. Some people said that they would happily agree on them collectively giving them £50 million. The EFL are asking for 150 million, so there's quite a gap in between those two figures. But some of the Premier League club members said, well, some of the men who own these EFL clubs are very rich businessmen. Can they not put their hand in their pocket? So it seems as if we're walking into a disaster with football clubs, and the Premier League are taking this stance that it's not our problem, Gov.
It's everybody's problem. Let's be brutally truthful, because if you look at football, you look at Vardy at Leicester coming out of non-league football. You look at Les Ferdinand, who we had up here in the Entertainers, coming out in non-league football. You look at the fella sitting in between us two on this podcast, coming out of non-league football with Tunbridge. That if you don't have these clubs operating, then football at the top level is going to suffer. You can't just go out and get whoever you like from the European scene or the South American scene. Chris Waddle come out of Taulo. You need to, never mind the lower football league clubs. And yes, I've seen the bit where the finger's been pointed by Premier League owners saying, well, there's this owner and that owner in the Football League who are exceptionally rich, can they not look after their own club? Maybe, but how many clubs have that sort of owner in these lower divisions? How many clubs are guaranteed to have a multi-millionaire, billionaire to run them? And the image of the Premier League is going to get massively tarnished by the fact that they're looking like Scrooge. They're looking to say, we are okay, so everybody else can paddle their own canoe. And it's not as simple as that. And we are in a situation where if one club goes, there will be a domino effect that goes throughout the country. We've already had the Bury and Macclesfield, and believe you me, there's clubs at this moment hanging on by their fingernails. And if we don't do something to help, then football as we know it is not going to exist when we come out of this pandemic, because this could go on for a considerable time without crowds, which is what Malcolm's been talking about, without income. And while the Premier League might have this safety first valve of television producing a lot of dough, a lot of clubs in League One and League Two live primarily on their gate receipts on the day and what they can get from match days in terms of the bar, etc., etc. They need the help, or simply they're not going to be there.
Sure, and also what we must seriously consider, and I'm sure that this is in the minds of Premier League clubs, how long is this going to go on for? You know,
absolutely.
If the Premier League starts subsidising the lower divisions, and we finish up in lockdown situations that run 3, 4, 5 years, then everybody's going to go down the plug hole financially. Everybody, you know, and this talk of billionaires, well, they should be putting money. One of the first to furlough staff and leave it to the government to pay them was Richard Branson at Virgin.
Yeah.
You know, billionaires, they aren't going to lose their money. They are billionaires because they make money, not lose it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right,
Malcolm. And that's what, of course, that's the famous phrase in football, guys, isn't it? You know, if you're a billionaire and you want to become a millionaire, own a football club. And if you're a millionaire who wants to go skint, own a football club. That's the best way of doing it. And it does mean that. It does mean that. I mean, look at our own football club. Look at our own football club. How much money he's actually got, but he's decided that he can't compete. It's time to get out. Take his 300 million. Oh, tar, not bad. And scarper for the hills. So there you go.
Exactly.
Oh,
big shout out to the sponsors, Darren Baldwin Funerals, for sponsoring us this month on StreamYard. Obviously, there we go. Darren Baldwin Funerals, local independent family business, 24-hour service. Also, big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, who make pool tables and snooker tables. And they've also knocked up some snazzy T-shirts. So, Malcolm and John, if you send me your addresses, I will be able to post you your T-shirts. There they go. Newcastle NUFC Matters T-shirts. They've made them with your names on the back and Q-Tech on the back as well. So big thanks to John for that. And now we've got them on sale on the website as well, newcastlelegends.com. If anybody wants one, have a look on there. And we're also having, obviously, we're organising this with the hope that we'll all be able to go out at the Tyneside Irish Club in aid of the Newcastle Food Bank, our Christmas party, which is on the 4th of December. And that is, as I say, in aid of the Food Bank. Lee Clark's going to come along and do a Q&A with me. And we're going to have a few raffles and auctions to try and raise as much money for those people who are obviously struggling at the worst time of year, especially after COVID. So if you can get along to that, hopefully John and Malcolm will be able to pop along as well if if we're allowed out the house. But who knows what that brings. But we thought we'd try and organise that to put some good cheer back into people's lives. So fingers crossed that can go off for the food bank. I want to talk a little bit as well about the England game coming up, and obviously what's going on with the players, Malcolm. And does it really mean anything to play for England anymore? Because these players are certainly not, it would appear, taking things seriously. They're certainly not taking the COVID threat seriously, with not one player but several players breaking curfews when they've been away, going to parties with 20 plus people there, and ultimately Gareth Southgate's left with egg on his face, and he's the one who's left to clear up the mess. I mean, it's not as if it doesn't seem they're taking it seriously, Malcolm.
No, I couldn't agree more. I don't know what the hell they think they're doing. A football career is short enough. You can have all the entertainment and all the parties you want when you've finished as a player. But particularly when you're an England international, for heaven's sake, you stick by the demands and the rules. And I cannot remember Alf Ramsey ever having to fall out with a player over anything, because he didn't even need to lay rules down for us. We were professionals and we did the professional thing. After the game, we'd go and have a few beers, but only after the game. And if there was a situation like this, I know that the likes of, I was in the England squad in Bobby Moore's last sort of period as the England captain, and Moro would just give you a look. And I've seen him do it many times, and players would go, "Oh, I'm not doing that again. I don't want that look from him." It just took that. And what I'm actually witnessing this last weekend is sheer madness, not just for the coronavirus laws that are in place, but why risk your England career? I just can't understand it. I really can't. And all I can say is that I don't think they give it the respect that they should. They're not giving Gareth Southgate the respect that they should. And to leave him constantly in these situations, I think is absolutely despicable.
Yeah, it's a strange one, John, isn't it? But it's put Gareth Southgate in a hell of a position.
Oh, I mean, yes, there's no question about that. He must wonder, if you go back to Iceland, as well as, where the bubble, 2 young players brought people, guests into the bubble, and that went wrong. And then he makes a big stance and leaves them out of the squads, and he comes over as a tough guy, a good disciplinarian, etc., etc. Then he's smashed sideways by what's happened here. It's a funny old life, we're talking about the England games and it being international fortnight. The funny old thing was that when I was back as a kid working down in Fleet Street, I got off a Newcastle United job up here. This was 1966, and being a cheeky young article, I said to the paper, "Well, yes, I'll come up, but I want to cover all the Olympic Games and all the World Cups as well." And incredibly, they agreed, which absolutely staggered me. And I thought, "Oh, that'll do for me." So off I'm going on this new career. 1966, they said, I came in about the May, June time, and they said, before you cover Newcastle United, cover the World Cup, which is over here, starting with the Northeast little thing where we had the North Koreans doing all sorts. I ended up watching England win the World Cup 1966 at Wembley. 2 years later, Newcastle United were at the start, 1968 of the 68-69 season, where they won the European Fairs Cup. I thought, what a great life this is I'm having here. I've just watched England win the World Cup. I've just watched Newcastle United win a European trophy. For the next 30 years, I'm just going to bask in winning things every third year or fourth year. I'm now an old age pensioner with one foot in the grave, and Newcastle United have not won a solitary single thing since. In England's not won a solitary single thing since. Now, to say that I'm little bit dispirited by that is an understatement. However, the one redeeming factor is that I've promised myself that I'm not going to retire until I see Newcastle United win a huge trophy. So I know I'm going to be here for my 100th birthday.
Brilliant. Malcolm, we've got 10 minutes left of the show, and I know that the people who watch really do enjoy listening to people, your stories about your career, and me and John have listened to this story many times. Tell us about that wonderful evening at Wembley where you destroyed Cyprus, because it's one which is still in the record books, despite Harry Kane trying his very best. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Don Revie was the manager of England at the time, and he had omitted me from the squad for his first 3 games, and they were struggling for goals, and there was a huge clamour across the sports press for Revie to select me in the next England squad, and he did. Now, so I arrived at the hotel, and there was Revie with his entourage in a lounge in the hotel in Hertfordshire. And so I went across and I said, Malcolm McDonald reporting. I said, no injuries from the game yesterday. And he just looked at me, never said my name. In fact, he never, ever used my name. And he said, I don't want you here. And as far as I'm concerned, you've been foisted upon me by the press. So if you don't score on Wednesday night, I'll never pick you again. Well, I'm forever the optimist. And I thought, well, at least I know I'm playing. I wasn't having to sort of wait until the team was named on the Tuesday or something like that. So I could get myself physically and mentally sort of prepared for the game. The only problem was that we were playing the world champions in their first game as world champions, and that was against Germany in the first game after they had won the '74 World Cup. And so Colin Bell scored in the first half, and with about 15 minutes to go, Mick Shannon was fouled just outside the penalty area on the inside right position, and Alan Ball was doing a little overlap, and Mick, still on his knees, just nudged the ball with his knee into the path of Alan Ball, who hit a far post cross. It evaded Sepp Meyer, the goalkeeper, and Beckenbauer, who was playing centre half. And there was me on the far post. Thank you very much. And I nodded it in. And we beat the world champions 2-0. And so in the dressing room afterwards, Don Revie came in, and he went to Peter Shilton, the goalkeeper. He said, shook hands with Peter and said, well played, Peter. And it was well played, Colin, to Colin Todd. Well played, David Nish. And he continued all the way round, shaking everybody's hand. He shook hands with Mick Shannon next to me, walked past me, completely ignored me, never said a word, shook hands with the 10 and the 11 and disappeared out the door. And so Alan Ball, he said, I saw what's going on there. Well, no, he didn't. He said, I saw what's going on there. He was a right little speaker, was Bally. So anyway, I had to wait because that game, I think, against Germany was sort of in the October, and it wasn't until next April that we played the next game. And so I arrived at the hotel, reported to Revie, and no injuries from the game yesterday. And he said, the same still applies. If you don't score, I'll never pick you again. Well, we were playing Cyprus. And so I thought, oh well, okay, at least I know I'm playing. And so I was able to get myself nicely prepared in training and what have you. And Alan Ball, he said, I see what's going on. He said, you're having a problem with Revy, aren't you? I said, yeah, I am a bit. So anyway, we had the team meeting in the afternoon before leaving for Wembley. And Alan Ball, as the team meeting ended and the players were dispersing to go and get their bags from their rooms and to get onto the bus to go to Wembley, Ball, he called me over, and he called Alan Hudson over, and he called Mick Shannon over, and he explained to those two players what Revy was doing to me, and so they said, "Oh, that's out of order. That's dreadful." So Ball, he said, "I've got a question for you. How many? What is the goal scoring record for England by any one player?" And I said, "Well, I certainly don't know." And Mick Shannon said, "I don't know." And Alan Hudson said, "No, I haven't got a clue." And so Bawley said, well, he said it was in 1938, Willie Hall scored 5 against Northern Ireland at Windsor Park for England. He said, tonight, he said, this man is going to break that record and we're going to help him do it. And I thought, hey, I've got Alan Ball, Alan Hudson, Mick Shannon, great players, and they're just looking to feed me to go and score goals. So out we went, and I scored the first one from an Alan Hudson free kick. And so having knocked that one in with my head, Alan Bawley came running over and he said, "That's your first." He said, 5 more to go. A bit later, somebody got to the dead ball line, pulled it back, and I volleyed that one in. And Bawley came rushing across and he said, "That's your second." He said, 4 more to go. Half time came and went, and we were out for the second half. And I think it was Kevin Keegan did a little bit of magic on the dead ball line and pulled it back, and I ducked and headed that one in, and Bawley's come running up. He said, "That's your first hat trick. Now you get your second hat trick." And then Dave Thomas, County Durham lad, who was playing for QPR, he came on as a substitute. Terrific crosser of the ball, Dave Thomas. Alan Ball knew it. He got into the inside right position and started feeding Dave Thomas in behind the Cypriot left back. And he knocked one terrific crossover, and I've gone up and headed into the far top corner, the fourth. And Bawley's come running across and he's gone, "Right," he said, "that's your fourth, just 2 more to go now." And then another Dave Thomas cross, and I dived on that one, and in it went. And Bawley's come running across. He said, "Right, you've got 5 now. Got 1 more to go. You've equaled the record, set a record at Wembley." He said, "Now let's set a new record." Well, I did happen to score again, but it was disallowed for somebody being offside. And the final whistle went. And in those days, there was a small electronic screen that was up behind one of the goals, hanging from the roof, and it just carried the score line as it changed through the match, and it just simply had sort of England 5, Cyprus 0, and as I was shaking Cypriot hands at the far end of the ground to the tunnel, I noticed that the screen went blank. And all of a sudden it relit. And what it now said was, "Congratulations, Supermac 5, Cyprus 0. And I just looked at that and I thought, wow, oh, that's amazing. You know, this was all my boyhood dreams come true, all in an hour and a half. And then reality struck, and I looked around, and there was Revy in his trench coat, and he was going around the track, heading for the tunnel, and I screamed across the pitch diagonally, pointing up at this screen, "Read that and weep, you bastard! Read that and weep!" And he just ignored me, and he hunched in his trench coat, and away he went. Anyway, we all got into the dressing room, and Revy came in, and he went, "Well played, Peter," to Peter Shilton, "Well played, Colin," to Colin, "Oh, well played, David," to David Nish. Shook all their hands, said, "Well done," using their names. Shook hands with Mick Shannon next to me, walked straight past me, totally blanked me, and shook hands with the other two guys, and then disappeared out the dressing room. And he never, in the time that I was there, ever called me by my name. And people always ask me, why? Why was he like this with you? And all I can think was that Newcastle kept beating Leeds at St James Park, and I kept scoring in those games. And we denied them certainly one championship, and maybe two. And I think he just took total umbrage for that. Do you remember that game, John? There, it was against
very well. I was up in the press
final
box. At that game, at the game with Tempest, I was up in the press box, and I always remember Brian Glanville, who was a well-respected journalist on the Times at the time.
Yeah.
With a mate of mine, and he come across, he said, "John, I know why you're here tonight, etc., for Malcolm, etc., etc. But I've got to tell you," he said, "he's a wonderful, wonderful club centre forward, but he's not an England centre forward," he said. So I was sitting just behind him. So it was the first one went in, I tapped him on the shoulder, and the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. And on the fifth, I said, "There's not any possibility you would like to reconsider your description of Malcolm McDonald tonight." However, what I've got to say, having listened to that story, which I've heard hundreds of times, but I love to death, my one thought that leaps out at me, Steve, on that story is what a failure McDonald was, because he didn't score 6 that night. He only scored 4. So it's a story of abject failure.
Right.
Yeah.
We always like to, when Malcolm's on and you're on, John, we always like to go back in the history books, and every now and then it falls on someone's birthday. Today it's Pat Howard's birthday.
Yes, it is. Yeah, dear old Paddy.
Paddy,
yeah.
Friend of,
I loved him as a player.
A friend of both of us,
and he was a great mate as well.
Yeah, went to Arsenal with you as well, Malcolm, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, he followed me down, and he was hard as nails, Paddy. He really was. You know, that you hear a phrase like that sort of bandied about in football, but Paddy was the genuine article. Really was.
Yeah, I did see him on St James's Park once. He was the half-time hero back in the 2000s, I think. I think that's about it. when they used to do that. And just
a lovely lad.
Yeah, wasn't he?
And looking back at games, John. Looking back at games, John. This year, 1972. Today, 1972. We played at home to Norwich. We won 3-1. Malcolm was injured in this game. It was 18,103 at St James's Park. John Tudor got a brace, and Guthrie got a goal.
Chris Guthrie.
Yes.
Yes, not his brother Ron.
No, Chris. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But apparently Kevin Keelan had an absolute blinder in goal.
Yeah. Oh, crikey. He was a terrific goalkeeper, was Kevin Keelan. And, He needed to have
it's amazing
to keep the score down.
Go on, John.
It's amazing to look back at sometimes and realise that there were some poor crowds on certain days at Newcastle United. I think obviously the Geordies knew Malcolm was injured and stayed away and had a few pints instead.
Sure,
but
you have to remember,
all happy days. Paddy. Sorry,
you have to remember, John, that yes, there were times when we had low crowds, but this was the time of the 3-day week. You know, they were similar situations to what's being faced now, although it wasn't an epidemic. It was strike action that was causing it, but it affected a lot of people, and everybody was down to the 3-day week. And businesses were finding it difficult to function and what have you, and they were difficult times. You know, there wasn't the affluence that there is now.
Yeah. Quick prediction then, lads, before we finish. England versus Wales tomorrow night. How do you see it going, Malcolm?
Well, I would hope that England go and show their superiority and really put on a display of football, because this is just the friendly. It's the important one is coming up on Sunday, isn't it? And so great opportunity for people just to get a touch and a feel of not just the ball, but of playing with different players, you know, away from their clubs, and get themselves into good form so that they go out on Sunday and give a caning to the opposition.
Yeah. Okay. So you got a prediction? Do you think it's going to be comfortable?
I would hope so. Yes, 2 or 3-0.
Okay, John. I feel exactly the same way as Malcolm. The only fly that there could be in the ointment is if that young Mackham goalkeeper decides to throw a couple in and give Wales a real chance. But outside of Pickwick turning the game upside down, I would expect England to win. But you never know with these Mackham lads.
You never do. He's dropped a right couple of boo-boos, hasn't he, this season so far?
He has that. Lads, we didn't even get a chance.
And funny enough.
Go on, John.
I was going to say, funny enough, if he was replaced, the goalkeeper they're tipping that could replace him, Pope, we saw drop a clanger up here with Burnley when we played them. Pope looked a very iffy goalkeeper on the night. So the real chance of Wales is not maybe their 11, but hoping that the England goalkeepers caught the twitches.
Yeah, good stuff. Absolutely brilliant. We went into a little bit of extra time there, but I don't think anybody minded. People asking us to do 2 hours, but we've all got to go and get our tea, lads. But listen, thanks for everyone. Thanks for everyone joining in on the chat. Been absolutely fantastic as always. It's always get the great lads on. And just to say, we're going to go and have some brown ale, some bread, and some black and white champagne, which has been all the talk on the internet. That's what we're all going to go and have for tea. We'll talk about the significance of that some other day, lads. We're not getting into that. We'll see you next week when Malcolm might have a different opinion on Joelinton. Until then, goodbye. Take care. Good night. God bless.
Good night, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye, folks.